Welcome to the Goalist. I'm the host, Alicia, and today I'm talking with River about goal number 30, learning to surf and making it more of a hobby, integrating it into my life. I had to skip last week's episode because I was sick, so my voice is a little off. I have River here with me, who's been a lifelong surfer for you just said 25 years. I've always been interested in surfing, like my whole
Mm,
life. I always thought it'd be so cool to move by the beach, live the surf life. I've only tried it twice and I couldn't even get up.
mm.
So I understand how hard it is, but I'm really excited to hear your story. Tell me a little bit about why you got into surfing in the first place.
Yeah, I grew up on Nantucket Island in Massachusetts, so we are 30 miles out to sea off of the coast of the continental US. Most of the activities there have something to do with the ocean. A lot of my friends growing up were fishing, sailing, diving, and all types of things like that. A lot of them surf, so that's what my group of friends picked up when we were pretty young, and so it just became a social activity, and we all got pretty obsessed. I think I started when I was 7 years old, and my friend's dad taught all of us. It was like 8 or 9 of us. It was a little pack. So, yeah, it's just become like a hobby that I've done my whole life at this point, and, yeah, it's really, like, nourishing in a lot of ways. It's excellent exercise and stuff, but it's a good excuse for, like, hanging out, socializing, and traveling, and, yeah, it's definitely a lifestyle.
So you never really took an official lesson. You had someone you knew teach you your
Mhm.
friend. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I've done a couple lessons, like, with, like, pro or, like, people who just to learn, like, specifics in the same way you might go skiing with a professional, and they might show you how to improve your technique and stuff. There's
Mhm.
always teachers who can help out with that. My brother's a big surfer as well, so he and I like to go together whenever we can.
Oh, it's a cool bonding activity.
Totally, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember the moment you first felt you got it? Like that you were able to just get up and
Mm.
actually surf?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a progression. When I was a baby, my parents would take me to the beach, and we would start with the boogie board, and we got into skimboarding, which is, kinda like surfing, like, on the shore break. So, it started like that. When you're a little kid, like, you get everything pretty quick, so
Mhm.
I think the biggest jump for me, though, was going from a soft top, so basically those spongy boards that they use for teaching all the students, basically, or new people, to a short board. So, a hard top surfboard, which is what you use if you're surfing more regularly.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that they started with a softer board.
Mhm.
Mm.
That's so you don't hit your head and get knocked out.
Good
Yeah,
idea. The second time I did it, it hit the ground and came up and just skimmed my ear. It made me
exactly.
really nervous to do it
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Maybe I need a soft top. What would you say is a misconception people might have about surfing?
Unfortunately, I think the biggest misconception is that surfers are chill, relaxed people,
Oh,
which
really?
is yeah, I would say that the majority of them are. It's like the actual practice of surfing definitely makes you a more relaxed person. But I think if you surf in a more crowded place like Southern California, there are so many people and you have to be so aggressive to actually get waves that it turns you into a pretty aggro person in some ways, which is kind of funny because we always compare ourselves to skaters, for example. Who I think on the outside have this appearance of being unapproachable and kind of mean, but it's the total opposite. If I had to generally characterize the surfers I know compared to the skaters, I would think that the surfers are a little bit more stressed out. And it just comes down to like scarcity because if you surf in a spot that's crowded, then there's only a finite number of waves that come through. People can get very aggressive. Whereas if you're skating, the park is always the same, the street is always the same. So you have free reign to a degree, but it depends. I think if you're in a smaller town or a more remote place, surfers are definitely more chill. I'm not a person who gets into fights normally, but the closest I've ever been or the most screaming I've ever done is surfing. Like, yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Yeah.
surfers were chill. Yeah. Okay.
I think they are definitely chill on land, but when you're in the water, if you're in a spot, there's beginner spots, which are definitely gonna be more relaxed because everyone out there is a beginner, but if you're at a more technical or difficult surfing spot, or a really good surfing spot where everyone's fighting over waves, then it can be a little stressful sometimes.
When it comes to learning to surf, what is the hardest part or the biggest challenges starting?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, there comes like another misconception, or maybe not a misconception, but I would say that the actual act of surfing is really only like 5% of the experience. The other 95% is paddling out, getting in position, sitting around waiting for waves. In order to maximize or like optimize your surfing, you need to be strong. It's about building strength and feeling comfortable in the water. Good surfers are comfortable and able to get lots of waves comfortably and can read the water. Bad surfing is being unaware of your surroundings and other people around you and not having the strength to really like get out there and be kind of in control of yourself and where you are. It can be dangerous in a lot of the crowded spots. You just have people who aren't very self-aware, so it can become very dangerous very quickly because you're surfing, you have boards that are hard, you can hit people, like, and so I think the most important thing, yeah, is being strong and getting comfortable. You can learn techniques with practice, but being able to control yourself is the most important thing.
I see. What kind of exercises or preparations can people do to be comfortable with the water and also strong?
Yeah. It's a full body workout, so a lot of the paddling and everything is all upper body, so, like, strong core. So, I mean, you can do exercises in the gym. Since I started going to the gym more frequently, I've noticed, like, big impact on my surfing, like, I just feel more in control and stronger out in the water. So, yeah, just going through gym routines or land stuff that, like, strengthens your arms, like, shoulders are really important. Your shoulders are, like, really the first things that give out when you do a big day out there because 'cause you're just
Mm,
paddling so much. Legs are important too. They get engaged a little bit less, but definitely when like the actual surfing itself is work on your thighs and stuff. So I would say everything really. The stronger you are, the better you're gonna be out there.
well, for somebody like me who wants to learn how to surf
Yeah.
and not be bad at it, I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm gonna master it, but not be bad at it.
Yeah.
What would you recommend is the best way, like, to go take lessons, to find a friend to teach, or just go out there? What would you say?
Yeah. I think well, a really important part that I haven't brought up is balance, which I think you definitely have as a dancer. So that's a huge ingredient. And so I think and that probably also covers a lot of the strength requirements too, but I would say, yeah, definitely start with a lesson. I used to teach classes in the summers when I was younger. Usually with the right teacher, you can, you know, get up your first or second try. And I think once you get that, there's a pretty short list of things to keep in mind. But it's about how to paddle well, which is basically how to position yourself on the board so that you're paddling efficiently and like not wasting energy.
Mhm.
'Cause the board itself has, like it's meant to be, like, hydrodynamic in a way, so you have to make sure you're taking advantage of that. Learning the pop-up and, like, how to control the board, that's a bit more advanced, like, the controlling part, but they're all things you can do within a week if you dedicate yourself to that. Once you get that feeling and you know what it is you have to do, then it's just keep going as often as possible. My brother, my friends, and I would go literally every day of the summer during break and sometimes before school or a lot of times after school. The island's small, so everywhere is like a 10-minute drive to the beach. So it was super accessible. Here in LA, it's relatively close. So going as often as possible is the most important thing.
I see.
And finding somewhere you're comfortable, like a good spot where you don't feel stressed out, for example, by people
Mhm.
who are going to like intimidate you. That's just a waste of energy and time if you're out there and you feel like you're getting in the way of other people, which again, like some surfers will make you feel like, but there's a lot of really good beginner spots. Dana Point, for example, down near Orange County is great.
Okay, so if you're like in SoCal.
Exactly. Oh yeah, there's tons of, I mean, Venice and stuff are good too. I think Dana Point's like probably the best beginner spot I've been to
Okay.
just because of like the form of the wave. But yeah, just finding a place where you feel like you're going to be able to get in the water a lot and practice as much as possible.
And how might one find a good beginner spot? I know people always talk about like the different types of waves in different
Mm,
locations too.
yeah.
But if you're not in SoCal or you're just trying to find that spot, how do you
Yeah. Internet. It's like
Just Google
yeah,
it.
it's like literally it's like every other hobby, like it's so over documented at this point that there's 100 phone apps that will tell you they'll give you surf reports and stuff. Honestly, looking through like surf forums and stuff are good. And then just going to the beach and talking to people. Go find a surf school. If you know a beach you can go to and you know there's a surf school there, for example, or you've been to a surf shop, people are the best resource for this stuff. It's all very subjective, but there's local wisdom wherever you go.
You were talking about surf etiquette before we started
Mm,
this, the unwritten
mm.
rules. I'm curious to hear some of your biggest tips if somebody were to go out there, what to be aware of
Yeah.
and not look like a complete noob.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's right of way rules in surfing, kind of like driving. They're not laws, but they're just basic etiquette that is worldwide. They're just manners that get passed around. In a lot of surf spots, you'll actually even see them posted up on signs by the town council or whatever. So it's basically just a system for making sure that people know when it's their turn or how to share and stuff like that. For example, I can go into the specifics of it, but they're really just like rules. You don't need referees out there. But the thing that frustrates me is a lot of people who join the sport and have never had a proper teacher and have just like picked it up on the internet or something, or like they're gone by themselves and haven't been taught those things. They don't really know the manners or the rules. It can be kind of frustrating when you're dealing with a lot of people who aren't very aware of their surroundings. I mean, a couple examples are like generally, if you can imagine the shape of a breaking wave, it kind of breaks at the center and keeps breaking outwards
Mhm.
or breaks in one direction. The person who picks up the wave closest to the breaking part, like they have right of way. People can't jump on the wave if you're already on it. That's called cutting someone off. It's incredibly rude. I see that all the time. People do it to me here. It's crazy. It's like someone just pulling in front of you on the highway.
Yeah, I was
It's
gonna say
kind
like
of
traffic.
it's totally like traffic. That's important. I mean, also paddling, from starting pretty far out. And that, like, if you start paddling for a wave farther out than someone and you're able to get on the wave first, then that's a right of way. When you're actually paddling out and you're not on the wave, the right of way is to the person who's on the wave. For example, if you're paddling out and there's someone surfing in front of you, you have two options. You can either go one direction and get in their way and screw up their wave, or you can go in the other direction and just get pummeled by the wave. You have to go the second way. So it's your responsibility to get out of the way. I don't always see people do that. So yeah, I think people end up learning the hard way sometimes, like getting yelled at, or like in the worst case, beaten up in some places. But yeah, it's just important to have. And I think like the most important thing, the only thing that really like overrides those rules are just general kind of senses of like respect and awareness of wherever you go. So if I go surfing in a place that's brand new that I've never been, for example, like if I go on a surf trip, I always take some time. I like wade out in the water a little bit and try and figure out like, who the locals are, who's getting the most waves and how not to get in their way because it can just be pretty disrespectful to the locals there, basically. Like some more crowded spots, it's just a free for all. And like, I think the locals are used to that. But especially if you go to a more secluded or smaller, less popular area, you just want to be respectful.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense. Just be mindful of the people around you. Yeah.
Always. Yeah. Yeah. It's like
Okay.
a contact sport sometimes.
Mm,
So I think people have this image that it's just this very zen, lonely thing that you go out and it's just you and nature. And it is. And in the most special situations, it definitely is. But the reality is like, especially here in Southern California or in more busy locations, it's you and nature and 100 other people. So you have to be a good driver, a good
I
citizen.
see. Yeah.
Yeah. What is it that interested you in surfing? What is it about it that made you put it on this list? Yeah.
It's funny because you're saying that the chill, I think I just grew up with this vision because I'm from middle of nowhere, Washington state,
Mhm.
where we don't have a beach. I always dreamed like SoCal, surfing, and being on the beach. I just get so happy. And the water, on the water, by the water.
Car
So I always thought it'd be so cool to learn to surf. I have all these goals and different directions I want my life to go and things
Mhm.
I want to try, but there's always this one path that's like Maybe I just moved to Hawaii and I surf and then
Yeah,
chill on the beach 24/7.
totally. That sounds like a great idea. I don't wanna complain about people. I think it's a really nice group experience and everyone's respectful to each other. In some spots, you just don't see it at all, so that can be very discouraging, but in some other spots, you can meet really fun, nice people out in the water and on the beach and make friends. So I think your vision totally exists. It just requires a self-awareness going into it. You would in any other situation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point
Yeah,
because people might go out there trying to learn, not realize they're so focused on their own thing that they're getting in the
totally.
way of other people. That self-awareness piece is really
Yeah,
good, and then you can meet people that way, and they can give you pointers or,
totally.
find new places to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Are there any so I'm curious because I think some people are afraid of surfing,
Mm.
whether it's just the ocean, sharks, whatever it may be,
No.
hitting your head on the board. That's
Yeah.
fine now
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
what's happened. What are some of the dangers and what can you do to prevent them?
Yeah. I mean, the most dangerous thing is other surfers in a lot of situations. Yeah, you always need to be aware of yourself and then of the other people around you. In a lot of situations, you find yourself having to be extra aware of people around you just because they're doing things that might be dangerous. So that's, I would say, number one in a busy or crowded spot. I don't really ever think about sharks. I think maybe there are a few spots that are popular that you do have to be aware of them. Like they are out there. They're just generally not interested in people.
You don't hear about things happening that often. It happens, but not very often.
You can kind of count it on one hand every year or so. I think big waves can be dangerous. It's funny if you go surfing and have an awful wipeout, what feels like an awful wipeout. And if someone happens to be like filming it, you look back and you're like, oh, wow, that was nothing. I was underwater for 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And so the whole thing can feel very overwhelming, even for small waves. That's just part of the process of getting comfortable with wiping out and everything.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful in some spots. The thing that does hurt people a good amount and something you have to learn how to do is be safe about hitting the bottom. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just by the actual like physics of how waves work, they generally crash in shallow water. You have to be careful about when you're jumping off waves or what might be underneath it. A big factor that impacts like the quality of a wave or like how it breaks or what its shape looks like has to do with the bottom. So here in SoCal, there's mostly like beach break, so just like sandy bottom or point break, which is mostly rocks. And so you have to be careful about what's underneath there. Like beach bottom, it's really just comes down to how shallow it is. And a lot of places that might be more tropical, you have like reef, and that is pretty scary too, because that can be just as hard and sharper than rocks. So
Mm.
that's the stuff that does worry me the most, are like other people and whatever's on the bottom.
So things to think about.
Hmm.
Um, what is a common mistake you might see beginners make when they're first learning?
Yeah. I think it's about positioning yourself on the board. People have a center of gravity and center of balance, and so do the boards. Every board, depending on its shape and size and volume, are going to have different kind of like sweet spots in terms of where you need to lie down on it or where you need to or how to paddle it or stand up. Constantly, whenever I was teaching, that always is the root of the problem. Someone might not be sitting on it correctly, and that just screws up everything else. It's like
Mm.
your paddling is bad, your standing up is bad. And so really taking that part seriously and treating that as your square one kind of checklist when you get on the board is like, all right, am I positioned well on the board basically? And so that means being evenly in between the two rails, the sides of the board, and making sure you're in the right distance between the tail, which is the back, and the nose, which is the front. And yeah, it's different for every single board. Your instructor will teach you how to do it, but it's really about getting into that position.
I see. Yeah, I never thought about that
Mhm.
balance. I remember when I was learning to snowboard, and when you're renting equipment,
Mhm.
it changes each time. So it's harder to learn when what you're working with is different each
Mhm.
time. And what kind of equipment, what all do you need to serve?
That's one of the things I like about it is it's really just a board. You wanna bring a leash, which is like a cable that connects you to the board for when
Mm.
you wipe out, and then whatever you need to stay warm in the water. So here, I wear just a normal wetsuit. By normal, I mean they measure them in terms of the thickness of the neoprene. like the rubber. And so a 3 millimeter wetsuit's pretty normal. You can wear that most of the year. In the winter, they have much thicker ones that are like 5 millimeters. And those are not very comfortable to wear. So I don't like those at all. You totally feel like the Michelin man. Like you
Oh, I
can't
bet. Oh
move.
my
Yeah. Yeah. It's
gosh.
super uncomfortable.
And in the water too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh boy.
So, but yeah, the ideal scenario is always just board shorts or a bikini because you feel totally free and have full
Mhm.
flexibility.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. When you're starting, you could probably rent a
Mhm.
surfboard and get to a point you can do some research and buy one.
Yeah, exactly.
What's something that you wish you knew when you started?
It's a good question. I don't even know. I don't really have any regrets with surfing. I don't know, like, it's,
You learned really young,
yeah.
so it's so much easier to learn stuff. And
Yeah, you don't really
so
think
much
about
younger. Yeah, like,
how
oh, I
to
wish I knew this. You just kind of got
yeah,
into
you
it.
just do it,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
I'm grateful that it's something I can do. I'm just happy that I learned it as a kid and stuck with it my whole time. It's nice to have something that is so ingrained in you. I can go anywhere and feel comfortable looking at waves and knowing my limits of being excited to paddle out wherever. It's just a nice thing that you can take with you wherever you go.
That leads me to another question of how has surfing possibly affected your life outside of actual surfing, like any
Mm.
areas or your mindset?
I've met a lot of my friends through it.
That's
So
nice.
there's definitely been a social aspect. It's a type of exercise that's good for your body that I don't even think about as exercise just because it feels like a fun hobby. So when I do remember that this is good for your whole body, that's nice to know. You don't just have to go to the gym all the
Mhm.
time and lift weights to be healthy. Like you have a nice hobby like this or like a nice activity
Yeah,
that's multidimensional.
you can be outside in the water. Okay, going back a little bit, if somebody takes a lesson,
Mhm.
what can they expect from their first few lessons? They learn.
They should expect some good time on the beach at first, learning how to position themselves on the board and how to do a pop up, which is getting from your stomach up to your feet. So that's something you always start out with on the beach. The teachers will basically, you kind of have to put your life in their hands because, they're going to, I wouldn't say your life, but you're going to be fine. But they're going to be out there dragging you around and pushing you in the waves and
Okay.
yelling at you to stand up. So they're kind of in charge of your experience, but it's super fun to do with other friends because you're encouraging each other. And it's a really nice group activity. If you're having trouble getting up in your first few lessons, really just come back to thinking about like how you center yourself on the board, like how you do the hop pop up. Make sure that the instructor is giving you the right sized board. You want to have one that's like not enormous, but big enough that like it's stable enough for when you're starting. Like everyone starts with a pretty big board. When I was teaching lessons, they would be like these 9 foot boards. So those are like really stable. But yeah, you should also like that instructor, if you're doing a one on one, should be in the water with you the whole time and taking care of you. Try and find yourself a good surf school. It's like
Yeah, how do you
even
find one?
um I think word of mouth is good if you can go to a surf shop and get their recommendations. I don't know how accurate Google reviews will be. I just think word of mouth stuff is always the best with the surfing community because they all know each other.
Mhm.
So they really can recommend things in ways that like Google or stuff wouldn't. But
So
yeah,
you can like go to the beach, find a surf shop or the people surfing and start talking. It's kind of the best way.
I think so. That's how I like to try and connect. Even my surf trips, for example, if I'm going to go somewhere, I try and network my way to someone I know who's maybe from a certain place or a country where I want to go surfing and then just have a conversation with them as opposed to doing all the research online. Like maybe do some online research to check how the information aligns, but local knowledge is always the best, I think. Earlier I said you could Google stuff. I think it's good to do both, but I just personally tend to put more trust in the people who are out there every day. I wouldn't go too cheap on surf lessons. Like you could probably expect them to be $100 an hour or something.
Okay.
But I would say it's worth it if you're going to get all the attention and focus from the instructor and they're going to give you good instruction and then you should tip them. A good lesson, well, if you're there and aware and good at recording what they're saying, they're going to teach you 100% of what you need to know that you can go on and practice with.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
helpful. Okay, do you have any really fun or interesting surf stories to share with us?
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of had a lot of different experiences. I've been in the water where I thought I saw a shark, and my friends and I paddled like crazy because we thought we were all going to die. And it turned out to be a dead fish that was flopped over on its side. Yeah. So there was, I mean, again, I've nearly gotten to a lot of fights. Like when I was little, like 10 or something or 12 years old, there was this guy growing up who was maybe like 20 years. He was probably like in his 20s or 30s. He looked like a Viking. He was enormous, gigantic, like huge, ripped, like giant blonde hair. And I once got in the way of him once and he yelled at me and I was terrified for the whole summer. I would like see his car and run away because I was afraid of him. Then it turned out my parents knew his parents. They were like, "Oh, we like that guy." It's just funny, like small town stuff. And then
Mm.
fortunately nothing too crazy. A lot of wipeouts.
You also surfed in a lot of places, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
what's been your favorite?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I had a really interesting surf experience recently where so my brother wife is from Dubai and we recently went there for their wedding in Abu Dhabi, like right next to Dubai. They recently opened up a world-class artificial wave pool, and that was the most perfect surfing experience I've ever had. That was
Oh,
crazy.
interesting.
It's a totally new technology. It's a very new concept for the surfing world. There's always been wave pools. In the last 10 years, there's been some really focused engineering and science that's gone into it. So there's a few wave pools around the world now that they are designed based on this technology pushed along by Kelly Slater, who's probably the greatest professional surfer in history. He's crazy. He's 53 years old and still beating everybody. So he's
Oh,
very impressive. He's kind of a legend, but he's kind of helped push the development of these new wave pools and they've engineered perfect waves. We got the opportunity to go surf there for a session. It's very surreal because you get a reservation for like an hour and a half. The reservation's only for 3 or 4 people. They tell you exactly what the wave is, how it breaks, and how fast it's gonna go. You can choose from a list of different wave types and
oh,
difficulty levels. And then when you're out there in the water, there's 4 or 5 support staff who are driving around on a jet ski, yelling at you, telling you what to do, picking you up when you wipe out and driving you around and putting you in the right positions.
whoa. So it's like a giant wave pool if they're out there on jet skis.
It's huge. Yeah, probably the size of a couple football fields.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like a very long rectangle. The way that the wave works, is it's like an underwater snow plow
Hmm.
that like pushes the water underwater, and it creates this wave. And so it just pushes waves back and forth. It's like on a giant train. It's the craziest thing, the weirdest surfing experience I ever had, but also the most perfect. But it doesn't have the character. It's different. It's a very unique experience. Surfing here in Southern California is beautiful. I like surfing in Topanga in that area near Malibu because the cliffs and everything are very pretty. I love surfing in my hometown when it's good because it's not too crowded and I know everybody in Nantucket. Exactly. I surfed a lot in Spain. The northern coast there is really nice. It's not too crowded and the waves get very good. My brother and I surfed in Puerto Rico last year, which was very fun. So
You've
yeah,
been all
there's
over.
yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot of really good spots.
Well, do you have a dream surf destination that you haven't been
Yeah,
to?
I've always wanted to surf in Indonesia. That's always been a surf destination. I think it's very busy now, but you can book surfing charters where they take you around on boats. I always wanted to do that because you can do a week on a boat and they'll sail around the different islands and you surf there in these remote places. So that's something I would really love to do one day. I got to save up for that. That's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
But
That's cool. I know you said you really only need a board to go,
yeah,
but is there one thing that you always have in your beach bag for surfing or that
yeah,
people should always have on
yeah,
this that might not be always said?
yeah. The other ingredient you need is wax.
Oh,
It's like a paraffin wax or maybe petroleum, something. It's like sticky. So you put it on the board because the boards are, if they're not a soft top, they're like fiberglass. So they're kind of like a hard, smooth surface. So like very slippery. So you have to put this wax on there for traction. You always need wax. That's
okay.
important. I always have a second leash in case I break mine.
Is that common to break it?
Yeah, that usually will break before the board does. Well, not always, but they get old, they get stretched out.
I see.
Yeah, when you're traveling, there's a whole bunch of stuff you wanna bring. Repair kits for if you put holes in the board or
Mhm.
puncture it, maybe replacement fins because those are installed on the bottom of the board for keeping stability. Sunscreen, a towel,
Oh,
the
yes,
beach
sunscreen.
stuff. The worst sunburns I've ever gotten have been when I was surfing because 'cause you're out there, you're wet, you don't realize you're burning, and then the next
Take
day,
off the
you're just
water.
crushed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah, yeah.
gosh, I can imagine. Good tip,
Mm,
bring your sunscreen.
yep, exactly, yeah.
Well, this has been really helpful. Now I know more. Surfing is not always like chill mindset.
Yeah,
Make sure that you're self-aware and
yeah,
not getting in other people's way. It's like
yep,
traffic.
yep,
Talk to the locals. Word of mouth is important.
yep.
Is there anything else that you would add that we haven't already talked about?
Yeah, I think surfing's funny because I think there's a few other activities that are like this, but they call it the bug. When you get your first few waves and you feel that experience, it's super addicting. And that bug will last you a week or a month or your whole lifetime. I think you just want to try and optimize the amount of time you go out there. You don't need that much stuff to do or to participate. You just need a board and a wetsuit basically and a nice spot. You can surf every day you want. Despite all the people and despite all of the complaints I have, it really is a nice lifestyle because you're working out, you're out in nature, you're playing in the water in like a I don't know, in a medium that like it's not land, which is kind of fun, you kind of start feeling like a fish. Like so
Oh, I love that.
no, it's a very immersive experience. I love it. I think everyone should do it to some degree.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
everyone should try it.
respectfully.
Do you still have the bug, the adrenaline
It's
rush?
coming back. My brother's obsessed, and so that's been kind of contagious. I've lived in a few places previous to LA where it wasn't very accessible, so I kind of turned off that part of my brain,
Mm,
but now that I'm back and I had a few good surf days recently, I definitely wanna get out there more often.
I see. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good. It
yeah,
sounds like such a great activity. Full body
yeah,
exercise
full
outdoors.
body and mind.
I'm excited to take these tips and try it. I've tried it,
Yeah,
but I want to like try making it a thing. I just
yeah,
do. I just love the beach and the water. So
yeah.
we'll
I
see.
would I would recommend a week-long surf camp or something. Maybe do it like the fall is really nice. I think it's pretty good here as well because the water's not too cold yet, but there'll be, like, more consistent waves, and, like, it's a nice way because you get, you know, maybe you can bring a friend or meet the people there in the camp because then it's just more consistent, like, you're doing it every day. By the end of the week, you're gonna have gotten a bunch of waves and feel confident. I think one day can be enough, but it just matters, like, how you follow up and how you
Okay.
practice.
Yeah. And if I want to make it, try to make it more of a lifestyle thing, give it a week.
Yeah,
Not even that long.
yeah.
To
No,
work
no,
on
no.
it.
Yeah, you can
And
pick it up pretty fast and then move to the west side.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, we live there. You just get your
yeah,
surfboard and walk out there. We live on the other side of LA.
exactly. Yeah.
So when you first moved in,
Mhm.
because we're neighbors now,
Yes.
my roommate was like, I think our new neighbor, I saw him coming back at 7 a.m. with a surfboard.
Yeah,
So you drive all the way out there early in the morning. It's like a 30-minute drive at least
yeah,
without traffic
yeah,
in
yeah,
LA.
yeah.
And you would surf and then come back.
I did that a few mornings. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh,
Yeah.
that's some dedication.
Yeah, it's worth it though. If you wake up and you watch the sunrise and you get a few good waves, it's like taking 10 shots of espresso. You're set for the day. So, yeah, it's a really good way to start. My work is also over on the west side, so I can
Mhm.
surf near there and before work, which is good. But early morning is good. It's generally better than the afternoons. There's less wind on average, and that can make the conditions a lot cleaner.
I see. Okay, that's good to know too.
Mhm.
Early morning. I'm
Yep.
not really a morning person, but that might make me one.
It'll turn you into one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I always ask people too, because this is the goal list. I'm talking
Yeah.
about a list of goals. What is at the top of your own goal list right now?
Oh, okay. Can it be like surfing or non-surfing?
Anything at all, like
Anything?
anything in the world.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
The
Top of
like
my goal list.
personal adventure,
Yeah.
travel, fun, even small.
Probably just surf more consistently right now. I've been really excited recently, so I wanna bake that more into my routine because
Mhm.
I don't go enough. So, that's
Okay.
definitely up there.
Making surfing big.
More into my routine.
That's great. Yeah. Do you have anything that you want to share with people listening?
Ooh, it's a good question. No, just support your local surf shop. Don't buy stuff on Amazon. The surf shops are a really important part of the culture. It's where you're going to meet people. The people who work there are surfers. They have wisdom about the local spots. And I think the saddest things is when those types of shops close up or don't exist because people are giving too much business online. I think most of the stores I go to are thriving. If you're looking to buy a board and find classes and meet people, start at your local surf shop.
That's some good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, support local
Yeah.
businesses.
Yes.
I love the whole word of mouth, being local. It's a good way to meet people, make friends as well.
Definitely.
Make it a
Yeah, yeah.
social thing.
100%.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being a part. It was really nice.
Of course. Thanks for having me.